Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, December 16th. I hope everybody had a great weekend. In today's show, we got a lot to go through. Chaos over the weekend, some huge awards being given out, including the Heisman. We have a doubleheader tonight in the NFL that just kicked off. We'll break down both of those games. We'll break down the Heisman Award. We will break down everything that happened on Sunday, and of course, we'll break down who is in front in the MVP race right now, along with much more. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, December 16th. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show here today talking a little bit about the Monday Night Football games that just kicked off. The Bears and the Vikings game has just kicked off as of about 3 minutes ago. Let's go through a preview before we get too deep into this game. We've obviously seen this matchup one time before this season. We saw the Vikings win on a walk-off field goal in overtime, a game that the Bears had to come all the way back in. They had to come back due to a recovered onside kick. That was one of those games that you look back on during their current 7-game losing streak, and it was sandwiched right in between the Thanksgiving Day disaster and also right after the game where they got that field goal blocked, right? This was right in between those two things, right? That disastrous run, and it's still ongoing. The Bears have now fired all of their coaches, and this is a much different team than they were just 3 weeks ago in Week 12 when they first faced off against this Vikings squad. This is a team that just got blown out. The Bears did against the San Francisco 49ers. They lost 13-38, a loss that I was not expecting, at least not that bad. I think we're starting to see something that became of the Jets defense with this Bears defense. Both of them had defensive head coaches. Both of them got fired. Now, we did see a slight uptick in the offense once the offensive coordinator became once this quarterback coach became the offensive coordinator, but then another downtick again, only one game against a good San Francisco 49ers defense. I'm not sure how that's going to go with Thomas Brown at head coach. I think that the offense should still continue to go, but the defense is something that I'm very worried about. The Bears all season long have struggled with at least one side of the ball, right? The defense at the beginning of the season was playing lights out. They won them games. Single-handedly, they did. Caleb Williams came on a little bit. They won a couple games in a row. And then everything fell apart. They're looking to avoid an 8th straight loss against a division opponent. The Vikings just clinched the playoffs with everything that happened this week. So they're not playing for too much outside of seeding. And they've at least most likely secured a top 6 seed. Obviously, they do want that 5 seed, although with the way that everything is playing out, it's looking like that 3 seed is going to go to the Tampa. It looks like the 3 seed is going to go to the Rams, and the 4 seed is going to Tampa Bay. I'm not sure which one of those the Vikings really want. I think those two teams are kind of similar. They're not really going to be able to pick and choose, but I think they'll be happy with either of those two. Getting into this game, though, the keys to this one, obviously, Caleb Williams. He's going to have a big day. Last time out, Caleb Williams had a huge day, but the Bears, especially in the first half of the last couple games, have been atrocious. They have been unable to get anything going. In the second half against the Lions, last time they played 2 weeks ago, they were getting they figured it out. Against the Niners, they did not. In the first half of their last 2 games, they have a combined 4 first downs. That is it over their last 2 games in the first half. They need to come out to a quick start if they want this game to go well. This is a Vikings defense that will attack the quarterback. This is a Vikings defense that will get at you and will create chaos. They need to limit that. They need to get out to a quick start, and they need to score points early. I want to see them score points in the first or second drive of the game. If they do that, I think the Bears can find a way to win this one and snap that 7-game win streak. If not, and the Vikings come out like they did last week, now this is a better Bears defense than the Atlanta Falcons defense is, so I think Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison are not just going to be able to have a field day around in the secondary like they did last time. It's still going to be not the easiest challenge, right? You still have you still have some really good players, especially in that secondary with the Bears. Although I am a little worried about how they're going to do against the run game of Aaron Jones. The Bears defense, especially against the run, despite how stout the defense kind of has been on paper, has been top 3 worst defenses in the NFL against the run. We're looking at a team with Aaron Jones that last time they went out, he had 106 yards against them. He's looking to have another huge game against the Chicago Bears. If their run defense can stand up a little bit and they can get out to a quick start on offense, the Bears have a shot. That's a lot of ifs. The Vikings, they just need to keep playing the football that they have. I know that they clinched a playoff spot. That shouldn't change their mindset. You want to go into the playoffs hot and firing on all cylinders. In the NFL, you can't just take a couple weeks off and say, we made the playoffs. We'll be all good. Once we're in, we're set. Vikings have had a great season, but they need to keep their foot on the gas pedal. They are not a team that can just flip the switch just like that. They are a team that needs to get the momentum going, and they got a lot of momentum coming off of kind of a downslope against some of the less good teams in the NFL before turning it around last week against the Falcons. I think this is a game where the Bears defense just has kind of given up. I'm seeing the Vikings go out, move the ball much better than they have in the last couple of weeks before last week, and I think they just do enough to win this game comfortably. Spread right now is at 7 points when it closed. I'm taking the Vikings to cover. I think the Vikings win 30-20. The other Monday Night Football game doesn't seem as exciting, but this is one that I think could be prime for just straight chaos. You have an Atlanta Falcons team that has lost 4 straight games, a Kirk Cousins that over that stretch has thrown 8 interceptions and no touchdowns. This is an Atlanta Falcons team whose offense is struggling. Defense has been torn to pieces and battered by opposing offenses over their last couple of games. The Broncos went off for a lot of points. Obviously, we were just talking about the Vikings. Their last opponent went off for 42 points against them last week. Kirk Cousins needs a huge get-back game, and against a Raiders defense that is one of the worst in all of football, the worst against the run, look for Bijan Robinson to have a huge game tonight. That's the matchup that I'm circling. Right? Bijan Robinson should go off against this Raiders team, a Raiders team that by all metrics is the worst run defense in football. They are in a must-lose situation, while the Falcons are in a must-win situation. And there's not really anything that's really a must-lose situation. The Raiders are just trying to keep pace with the Giants for the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. Now, the Raiders most likely will be 1 or 2. Their team is just not very good. But to add to some storylines there, you have Desmond Ridder as the starter. Now, that's not going to mean much just on paper. But Desmond Ridder, the quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons last year, he got his shot. He's having a revenge game. And revenge games can go crazy. We saw just a couple of Monday nights ago Jerry Jeudy in a revenge game go off for one of the best receiver performances of the entire season. This is a chance for Desmond Ridder to say, "Hey, I've still got a chance. This is audition tape for backup role in the NFL next season. See if he can stick with the team. He's got the guys to trust, right? This is in all honesty, a very similarly built offense to the Atlanta Falcons of last year. Aside from the running back position, where there's an obvious downgrade, they're running out there with Sincere McCormick, a guy that I think is a good story. Not that great of a running back, not going to be there long term. You have Alexander Madison behind him. He's like a career number 2 backup kind of guy. That's fine. The wide receiver position, I think Jacoby Myers is a better receiver than Drake London is. And of course, Brock Bowers, very much similar in hype to rookie Kyle Pitts. He's been actually delivering, though. So this is a team that kind of is built similar to the style that you had with Arthur Smith's Falcons last year. Michael Mayer, another tight end, in case they wanted to run a lot of 12 personnel out there. This is a game that I think will be closer than a lot of people think. This is a Raiders team that, while yes, it's been very bad. The defense has been awful. This Falcons team desperately needs something to go right for them. I think this is their get-right game. I think Kirk Cousins has a huge game tonight, kicking off in just about 15 minutes. I do think the Raiders put up a bit of a fight, at least early in this game. I think by the end, the scoreboard makes it look like it wasn't close, but I think the Falcons struggle early. I think Desmond Ridder gets a little bit of a hot start, and I think the Falcons do end up pulling away in the second half. But still, this is not going to be a comfortable game for the Falcons, not really for the Raiders either, that probably are hoping for a loss. I'm taking the Falcons to win this game 28-14. But let me know what you think is going to happen in this doubleheader tonight. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to college football. The Heisman Award was announced on Saturday. We're going to talk about Travis Hunter winning the award, whether or not he deserved it, who really should have gotten it between him and Ashton Jeanty. We'll talk about all that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I'll make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, December 16th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished previewing the Monday night doubleheader that takes place tonight, where we saw the kickoff between the Bears and the Vikings, a huge game in that division, trying to get right for the Bears, and a game that's important for both playoffs and draft order with the Atlanta Falcons taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. In this segment, we turn our attention to some action from this weekend. College football, the Heisman Award, the most important award in all of college football, the Heisman, was given out on Saturday. It was the most compelling race that there's been in a very, very long time. We're going to talk about that result coming up in just a second and who should have won. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about the award, the first full-time defensive player to win the award since 1997, when Charles Woodson did it with Michigan. And that is probably the closest comparison to what Travis Hunter is doing. Now, that's not to say that we've ever seen what Travis Hunter is doing right now in college football, right? This is a very, very unique season that he has had. Travis Hunter deservingly so won the Heisman, I think. And I think people that are going out there and bringing up these honestly bad faith arguments for Ashton Jeanty, who also deserved to win the Heisman. It's possible that two guys can deserve to win the best player in the country award. We saw it. There were there's three awards that are given out to the best player in the country by different voting groups. The Maxwell Award, that one went to Ashton Jeanty. The AP Player of the Year, that one went to Travis Hunter. The other one also went to Travis Hunter. There were three of them. Travis Hunter took home two and the Heisman. So 3 out of the 4 best player in college football awards went to Travis Hunter, and he absolutely deserves it. We're going to run through some stat comparisons between them, and it's tough because they play different positions. You can't really compare them head to head. A running back has different duties than a wide receiver and a cornerback, right? But looking at Travis Hunter, the guy who ended up winning, he had 92 receptions. Good for the best in all of the Big 12. He took those receptions for 14 touchdowns through the air, also led the Big 12, a rushing touchdown, that's 15 total touchdowns on the season, and 1,152 yards. That is incredible performance. That's an incredible performance on the offensive end. And if that was it, that's probably not enough to win the Heisman, but he did end up winning the Biletnikoff Award, the best wide receiver in the country. Now, you can talk about whether or not a guy like Nick Nash should have won it. I don't think so. I think Travis Hunter pretty clearly was the best wide receiver in the country. I don't know why people are mad at that. But also, he is a guy that you could make the argument was the best secondary player in the country. He had 4 interceptions on the season, but what's more impressive than that is through playing 13 games, he was only targeted 38 times, which means he had an interception on 10% of the time the ball was thrown to him. And some of these plays are highlight reel plays. He also led the Big 12 in passes defended, 11 passes defended. If you combine that with interceptions, he also dropped 1 interception. That is almost 40% of the time that the ball was thrown to him, he stopped it. That is incredible. 42 passer rating against him. That is not that's not normal with the amount that he's on the field. People say snaps are not a stat, and that's right. Snaps are not a stat. It's true. It doesn't matter how many snaps you are out there. It matters how effective you are in the snaps that you are. I could go out there for 2 snaps every single game. If I caught a touchdown on 100% of my snaps, people would put me into some conversations, right? Don't you think? If you caught a 75-yard touchdown every time you touch the ball, I feel like it just matters how effective you are. And for the people that are saying, oh, he only got it because he played a lot, it's not true. You don't appreciate what he's been able to do on the field all season long. It's not just the fact that he does it both ways. It's the fact that he was arguably the best wide receiver and arguably the best cornerback in the country. He won the best wide receiver award and the best defender award this season. That is insane. It is really cool to see, and we're never really going to see it again. We don't just get talents like Travis Hunter popping out of the woodwork every single day, right? It's the reason why a guy like Shohei Ohtani is so special in baseball. He can do it both ways at an elite level. Sure, just about anybody could go pitch and hit, but to do it at the level that these guys are doing it, playing both sides of the ball, is incredibly, incredibly impressive. Now, Ashton Jeanty, for his credit, also had a great season. I don't think anybody would say that he didn't. Ashton Jeanty deserved the Heisman as well. Travis Hunter just flat out had a better season than him. Ashton Jeanty's stats, he led the nation in carries at 344, but that's fine. Like I said, it's not about how many times you touch the ball. It's not about how many snaps you have out there, but what you do with it. And people can say the same thing about Travis Hunter that they can say about Ashton Jeanty. He touched the ball a lot. Ashton Jeanty, 2497. That's his yardage total. Good for best in the nation. Chasing down Barry Sanders. He averaged 192 rushing yards per game. There was not a single game all season long where he was less than 125 yards on the ground. That is incredibly impressive. And it's not just that. When teams were playing Boise State, they would stack the box. And one stat that I think that's really, really cool to see is his yards after contact. Ashton Jeanty finished with 2,497 yards. If you just take the yards he had after contact, he would still be top 10 in the nation in rushing. He had almost 2,000 yards after contact running the ball. 1,889 yards on the ground after he was touched. That is incredibly impressive. He had a breakaway on over 50% of his carries. This guy bounced off contact. He ran hard, and sure, it's the Mountain West. The Mountain West is a really good conference. They had a win and you're in playoff situation. Boise State legitimately ranked 10th in the nation. Right? Boise State was ranked above 2 teams that made the playoffs this year. They were ranked above Alabama this year. Put some respect on Boise State's name. Put some respect on the Mountain West a little bit. I know it's the group of 5 and you have your bad teams, right? But you also have your bad teams in the SEC. No one is arguing that Mississippi State was great. No one is arguing that a team like NC State was great, right? You have these bad teams in every single conference, and the Mountain West might not have its biggest share of elite teams as the SEC might have, but it's not a huge drop off. And I think we're going to see that in the playoff game, especially if they end up taking on SMU. I think that's going to be a really interesting game that could go either way. But put some respect on Ashton Genty. Not just the yards, he also led the nation in touchdowns, 29. 29 rushing touchdowns, led the nation. He led the nation in total scrimmage touchdowns at 30 touchdowns. He only fumbled the ball twice for a guy that touched the ball 344 times. He only fumbled twice. That is crazy. What he was able to do on the ground was incredible. Travis Hunter still deserved the Heisman. And again, I understand if you want to push the Ashton Genty agenda, right? Ashton Genty had a great season. He won the fan vote, and that counts for something. Having the fans believe that you won the Heisman is something that's really cool to hang your hat on. Now, it's not going to be anything that, actually means awards, but it is really cool to see that it was as split as it has been in over 10 years. This was the closest margin of a Heisman vote since 2009. Ashton Genty and Travis Hunter were both top 4 in all-time votes, all-time ballots, both over 90%. Now, there were a couple of them that there was one voter that didn't have either of them on the ballot, and I think if you watched college football this year, to not have them 1 and 2, irregardless of that, to not have either of them in your top 4 is ridiculous. That is something that I just can't understand. And I think everyone that's watched college football, or at least even followed it around at all, would see that doesn't make any sense. These are both guys that at a bare minimum should have been top 4. They definitely should have been top 2. I think it was very clear that they both were the best players in the country. But Travis Hunter ends up taking home the award, and he absolutely deserves it. I'm really curious to see what he does at the NFL level. I think it depends what team drafts him. If he plays wide receiver or cornerback or both, you look at his numbers, he had career years on both sides of the ball. Of course, he was healthy for the first time for a full season on both sides of the ball, but he had career seasons in both. This is a lockdown corner, a wide receiver who might have the best hands in all of college football, and a guy that is just a walking human highlight reel. He deserves, I think, the shot to go both ways in the NFL, but that's a conversation for another day. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to the MVP, the Heisman of the NFL, if you will. The MVP race has heated up after great performances from both frontrunners, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. We will compare their resumes. We will talk about who is currently in the lead and who I think should be winning right now. We'll talk about that coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, December 16th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the Heisman Award. Travis Hunter took it home. We talked about how close of a race it was. In this segment, we turn our attention to the MVP race, another race that's going to go down as one of the better races in a very, very long time. A tight race between Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. We'll talk about where they both stand, especially after last week's masterclass from both of them. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, December 16th. Like I was saying, we're going to get into some MVP chatter here. The MVP is as hotly debated, at least in my opinion, as it has ever been, at least in the last 10 years, at least in recent memory. This is going to be an incredible MVP race. It's coming down to just two guys, it seems like, Lamar Jackson versus Josh Allen. Both of them, masterclass, incredible performances last week against the Giants and the Lions, respectively. Josh Allen has come off of one of the best stretches in the history of NFL football, putting up 10 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks, no turnovers. If you want to go back to a third week, that is 13 touchdowns and no turnovers. That is incredible. He's putting up video game numbers. No one can seemingly stop him. He is scoring at will. He set a record for fantasy points in the history of quarterbacking. That is a way that you can quantify statistical performances. That is arguably the best single game statistical performance by anyone in the history of the NFL, what he did against the Rams 2 weeks ago. Josh Allen has been incredible. He is top 10 in every single major category. Touchdowns on through the air, touchdowns total on the ground, which he has 11 of them, by the way, only trailing Jalen Hurts. Two quarterbacks at the top of that list is kind of crazy to me. But this is not an easy award for Josh Allen, and in any other year, probably would be. He's cut down on turnovers, which have been his biggest issue, right? He's been really struggling with turnovers over the last couple seasons. People say, hey, Josh Allen is a great quarterback, no doubt, but he just puts the ball at risk too often. Only 5 turnovers all season, no fumbles, despite running the ball almost 100 times already this season. Josh Allen is doing incredible stuff on the football field right now. But the reason it's not a runaway race, although some sports books would have you believe that, with him currently being the runaway favorite, crazy to me, at minus 700 at some books, that is huge odds for him. But right behind him is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson you can find at, again, a mind-bogglingly low odds at plus 1,400. That is ridiculous for me. Lamar Jackson is, if you just go by statistics, which is not the MVP award, light years better than than Josh Allen, right? Lamar Jackson is top 5 in every single category. He is top 3 in every single category. He is tied with with Josh Allen for total touchdowns. Lamar has 3 on the ground and 34 through the air. He only has 3 interceptions. Lamar Jackson has won 2 MVPs in the past. 2 of them. One of them was unanimous. One of them was last year. He is setting career highs in everything. He has a career high in touchdowns already. He has a career high in completion percentage. He has a career high in quarterback ranking. And he is just about 200 yards shy of his career high for passing yards. He is about to shatter his own records for everything through the air. And that's not to mention what he's done on the ground. He passed 6,000 career rushing yards against the Giants last week. He has multiple games with 50 rushing yards and 5 passing touchdowns this season. He has been incredible all year long. He has been statistically the probably best or second best quarterback in the NFL, which is why I say the MVP award is not just statistics, because otherwise Joe Burrow's name would be in this conversation. He's thrown for 4,000 yards. He's thrown for just about the same amount of touchdowns, 36 touchdowns on the year. He also has 37 total touchdowns. He has been incredible for a Bengals team that just can't win because that defense is bad, and that brings it up to the big argument. How much is winning a factor in the MVP award? If you go look historically, this is something that has been obviously a trend. You have to be a winning team to win the MVP award, and that's not something that I totally disagree with. It's not something that I really hate at really. This is something that is just a true fact about it, right? You have to be good. You have to win games to win the MVP award. You can be the statistically best player, but if it doesn't help your team win, you're not the most valuable player, and that's a fine mindset to have. But Lamar Jackson is winning games. He's just not winning games at the same clip that a guy like Josh Allen is. And that's because the schedule is just harder, right? There's different reasons why, and they are struggling. I'm not going to sit here and be a Lamar Jackson apologist, because there are good reasons for both of them to win the MVP. Again, like the Heisman, they both deserve to win the award, but it's got to go to one guy. And when you take a look at it, again, historically, you have to win the division. 90% of all MVP winners have won their division to win the MVP. There have been a couple guys that haven't. There have even been guys that didn't make the playoffs. But that is extremely, extremely rare. I believe that's only happened once in the history of the MVP. They've given out 90 of those. Now, there's also only been 6 guys to repeat the MVP award, and whether that's because of voter bias, or voter fatigue, that's a real thing. There's no doubt about it. Storyline is a big thing in any award voting, but especially in the MVP, right? You have a guy in Lamar Jackson that's already won 2, and Josh Allen, who's just been so close and never gotten it. So that's already hurting his case a little bit, and that's fine. I understand it. Give Josh Allen one. He deserves it. But when you take a look at everything that's going on, and I'm going to put this as a caveat here. The Ravens are just one game back in their division from the Pittsburgh Steelers after last week. They get a win, the Steelers lose to the Eagles. They play each other this week. If Lamar Jackson and the Ravens win that game against the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, they take the division lead. When that happens, if I don't see the odds close, if I don't see the odds shift, regardless of what Josh Allen did, because the only reason that I can possibly think that Lamar Jackson is such a heavy underdog to Josh Allen is because the team's not winning the division. But if they take the division lead, if they end up dethroning the Pittsburgh Steelers and the odds don't shift to just about 50-50, I don't understand. Because everything you look at, aside from wins, is screaming Lamar Jackson should win the MVP. And I'm on that side. I think Lamar Jackson should win the MVP. Again, I think they both deserve it. But it's only going to go to one guy. And I cannot look at the numbers that he's put up, again, and say that he doesn't deserve to win. Now, all of that can change if Josh Allen he keeps up this historic pace that he's on. He's doing things that we've never seen done in the NFL. He's putting up insane numbers. 70 points have been accounted from him over the last 2 weeks, and the Bills have scored 90. He has been an absolute monster. 77% of the Bills' points have come from him. That's crazy. He's great. He's great at football. If he continues that, is his MVP. I just don't see a world where he does continue that performance. Now, they do have the Patriots twice. They've got the Jets, so those are pretty easy defenses. Maybe he does. So he has the ability to run away with it. But if he just comes back down to earth and plays normal football, and everything else kind of goes the same way, I think Lamar Jackson should win the MVP. At least that's where I stand right now. Let me know what you think. Who do you think should win the MVP? Where do you stand right now? Who is the current MVP in the NFL? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we break down all of Sunday's action. Crazy games from those top 2 frontrunners. We'll talk about that a little bit. Injuries to the QB position hitting hard. Patrick Mahomes goes down, and playoff reactions. Huge games with playoff consequences. We'll talk about all of that and more coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, December 16th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the MVP between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. In this segment, we turn our attention to everything that happened on Sunday. A wild weekend, lots of blowout games, some craziness happening with balls being dropped at the beginning of the end zone. We need to get that fixed. We'll talk about all of that and more in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. You do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, December 16th. But like I was saying, we're going to get into the crazy action from Sunday night, from just all of Sunday, right? We'll start off with the potential Super Bowl matchup. We talked a little bit about what Josh Allen did. He went off for over 400 yards, 430 total scrimmage yards from him, 4 touchdowns. But it wasn't just him. The running backs had huge days against a Detroit Lions team that's defense is in shambles. They had 2 more brutal injuries on the defense that are most likely season-ending, a torn ACL, a broken jaw. They are bringing up replacements as fast as they can, but the cracks are beginning to show. And we saw how Josh Allen, with his pocket movement, his ability to evade pass rushers and extend plays, really helped carve up that defense. And I think that's the big takeaway from this one. The Lions started off a little bit slow. The Bills had a really good game plan. They eventually figured it out, and they got the ball going. Another thing that's going to hurt the Lions a lot, David Montgomery is down for the rest of the year. A running back who has been incredible for them as part of that duo with him and Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, I'm not necessarily super worried about it because Jahmyr Gibbs, in my opinion, when you take a look at both backs, whenever he touches the ball, he explodes. He's like a rocket. He takes off, and I don't think there's not too many players on the football field that are faster than him when he gets into open space. David Montgomery is a great running back. Ground and pound, break some tackles, get that tough yardage. Jahmyr Gibbs can do that too. They both have goal line back abilities, but it sucks. You get to give a guy like that with that much explosion a rest. He doesn't have to be on the field that often. Maybe they can go pick up a guy like Clyde Edwards-Helaire who just got cut. I don't think that's going to make a big difference. But Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, should be able to keep this Lions team afloat. But that potential Super Bowl matchup, it was the highest scoring game in the NFL this season, 48-42. Highest scoring game, 90 points scored in that one. It just broke the record that the Bills had set the week prior with the Rams. And that's something that is a little concerning. Both the Lions and the Rams, good offenses, were able to move the ball, not just on the ground, which the Bills had been susceptible to before, but through the air is where I'm really concerned. And I know that secondary is a little bit banged up right now, but teams dropping 40 on your head 2 games in a row, I know the offense has shown it can keep up, but if that happens in the playoffs, the Bills are going to be in some trouble. They need to figure that out. They need to get healthy. They need to slow down the passing attacks. Otherwise, they're going to get absolutely killed when it comes to January and potentially even February. Outside of that, some other games with huge playoff implications. We had the Battle of Pennsylvania, where we saw the Philadelphia Eagles take down the Pittsburgh Steelers. We had Jalen Hurts finally finally, for the first time since week 10, really, put together a great passing performance. And obviously, a lot of that was fueled by, I guess, hatred to the media by the story that came out. That was just something that was happening. The passing attack was awful. He has a broken finger on his non-throwing hand. He went out there. Saquon Barkley did his thing. Didn't have a great game, but they did enough to take out a good Pittsburgh Steelers team. This just shows how good this Eagles squad is, right? When you have a guy in Saquon Barkley who legitimately was in MVP conversations about will he break the all-time rushing record? Will he break the all-time single-season scrimmage yards record? Which he still could do. He's going to need to really turn it on down the stretch here, but he still could do after a little bit of a down week. I know, only 80 yards on the ground. Oh no. Saquon, what are we going to do with you? But they were able to win in different ways, which is the thing I've been saying about this Eagles squad, right? They have probably the most talented roster on paper. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, when they're both healthy, they can carve up defenses like nobody else. That's probably the best top two receiving tandem in the league. You can argue with me about that, but I do think that them two, when they're on, I think they're the best in the league, right? You have Saquon, top 2 running back in the league. Jalen Hurts, top 10 quarterback in the league, top 5 maybe? I'm not going to go that far. Top 10 quarterback in the league here, right? The offensive line is great. The defense is the best defense in the league right now, right? They have everything clicking to go and win a Super Bowl. But they have a little bit of rumors surrounding, everything going around with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown. They seem to have it fixed up, although I'm sure that was a little bit overblown. But there's some truth to it if it's coming out from Brandon Graham, a player in the locker room. They're not going to talk about it. They got it patched up. But the big story for the Steelers in this one is TJ Watt goes down. TJ Watt is week to week with an injury, and this Steelers team looks incredibly different without him on the field. They win only 10% of the games when he is not on the field for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That is something that is incredibly, incredibly important, especially for a team that is kind of built around its defense. Russell Wilson has been able to sling it around a little bit. He's been able to do his thing, but really when it comes down to this Pittsburgh Steelers team at the end of the day, they're still built like that post-Big Ben era team, right? That old Big Ben era team where Russell Wilson, if we're being honest, isn't the quarterback that you want to have long-term. You can delude yourself by looking at the wins he has, the big numbers that he's put up against bad defenses, and you can say, oh, he's having a great season, which he is. But he was doing the same thing last year with the Vikings, with the Broncos. The only difference is with the Steelers, he now has a defense. And you can say the same thing about the Broncos with Bo Nix, right? I don't think Bo Nix is having a particularly great season, and that's a lot easier to say now that he has a stinker of a game, 3 interceptions against a Colts defense that hasn't really been that good all year. But you look at the numbers. He's the 23rd best quarterback in the league, right? Bo Nix is. And we'll get more into that game in a second, because that's another game with huge playoff implications. But this Philadelphia Eagles squad really showed me something. They're now tied with the Lions for first place. They're both at 12-2. I don't think they have that bye yet, but that's something that's well within their grasp down the stretch. They're going to have to fight for it. Going to be very curious to see who ends up with home field advantage throughout the NFL playoffs. And the Lions are kind of on a downward trend with how many injuries that they have suffered. Not going to be an easy road for them. Still a very good team. Questions about that onside kick for the Lions, though. I think it was the right call. Honestly, it did not work out the way that they wanted it to. Obviously, Mac Hollins makes an incredible return, tips it up to himself, catches it, runs down to the 5-yard line. Lions still have a chance there at the end. Jake Bates almost gets it in that scrum where they're able to throw up a Hail Mary. I thought the Lions played really good football at the end, really smart football. Wasn't enough to get the win. But I do want to talk about that Colts game a little bit. I know I've been kind of jumping around a little bit here, but that Colts game is something that is a showing of how one play can really ruin a game plan, the way that a game is going. And that one play, of course, is Jonathan Taylor dropping the ball before the end zone. It wasn't just him this week. We had the Bengals do the same thing. A defensive player took it to the house, kind of lost the ball, but still, right before the end zone, fumbled it out. It was a turnover. Instead, this is something that we've seen a lot of this season. It happened to Malachi Corley when the Jets were about to score a touchdown, right? It has happened more times this season than any time else that I can remember. And I don't know what's going on with the NFL this season. I don't know if players are just forgetting what happened with Deshaun Jackson all those years ago, but that's something that I feel like is really hard to forget, right? If coaches aren't going through this film, every single coach, regardless of if it happened to your team or not, and saying, hey, hold on to the ball until you are past the letters in the end zone, right? I feel like that's something that needs to be ingrained in these guys a little more, because you cannot be doing those, right? That would have changed the game. Instead of 13-7, it would have been 19-7. The Colts didn't score another point. They still ended the game with 13 points, and this was a close game. I know it doesn't look close with a final score of 13-31, but that was a brutal game for the Colts. Anthony Richardson, 17 for 38, just 50%. He's a guy that I want to believe in. Really, truly, I want to believe in. He is incredibly inaccurate, and he's not quite ready right now. I don't know what it's going to take. What he does on the ground is great. He scored a touchdown with his legs, but that one play really kind of took the wind out of them. They tried some trick play. It got intercepted. It was called a fumble, but that was a pick six by Nick Bonito over there. It's a good Broncos defense, and when you're taking a look at what it takes to beat a team like that, and taking a look at what it takes to beat a team like that, you just have to play good football. And they were playing great in the first half of that game. The second half was atrocious. You can go through the numbers. That was the worst second half, the second worst second half performance in the history of the NFL since 2000. Going back 25 years, it was the second worst second half in the history in that stretch of football, right? That's not good enough for the Colts. If they had won that game, they would have had a 77% chance to make the playoffs. Instead, now, they just have a 13% chance to make the playoffs. Their schedule is still easy down the stretch. That was by far their hardest game. They have the Titans. They have the Giants. They have the Raiders. Probably the top 3 draft picks. Maybe. There's a real shot for that to be the case. They need a clean house. They still have a shot. Probably won't happen. They lost the division. If they had won that game, they still would have had a shot to take out Houston in the division. They were unable to. But those were the big playoff games. Those were the big games. Speaking of Houston, just a little bit. And I know we're getting all over the place. We'll get into it a little bit more tomorrow when we talk about winners and losers. But Tua Tagovailoa could not get anything going. 3 interceptions in probably the biggest game of the season. They needed this one. They needed to win out. They still technically have a shot, but 3 interceptions, a huge pick by in the last 2 drives, through interceptions trying to get the ball to Tyreek Hill by Derek Stingley Jr. He had an incredible game. He's one of the top corners in all of football right now. He's a guy that you don't want to see coming, but Tua cannot step up in big games. Lots more to talk about with Week 15, but we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the college football playoffs kick off next weekend. We have 12 teams. 12 teams to power rank here. We usually do our college football power rankings, but we just have 12. So we're going to go 1 through 12, break down who is the best team in the college football playoff and who is the best shot to win it all. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Monday, December 16th. If you were just tuning in, we just finished going over the wild Week 15 in the NFL. In this segment, we finish off our show with a little bit of power rankings. The college football playoffs are officially set. 12 teams in. We're going to power rank all of them. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Monday, December 16th. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show today here with a little bit of power rankings. We get into the top 12 right here in college football, the last few teams that can win the conference, can win the national championship here. And we're going to start off at number 12. The Clemson Tigers. They were a team that got in off of technicality, right? They were a team that got in after winning the ACC tournament or the ACC championship game, right? The Clemson Tigers are a team that could be very dangerous. We've seen them against a team like SMU just out physical them. But when it comes to a team that is going to be much more physical, we saw them get absolutely destroyed by Georgia early on in the season. We saw Louisville take care of business against them. This is a Clemson team that has struggled with better matchups. Now they go up against a Texas team. And that Texas team is nothing if it's not physical. And I think Clemson, as physical of a football team as they are, and as similar as they are to Texas, I just don't think they're going to have the offensive firepower, the offensive juice, or really the ability to get past and make those big home run plays that they rely upon so much in the college football playoff against Texas. And I think they're the worst team in. Right behind him, or right ahead of him, I should say, is the Boise State Broncos. I talked up the Mountain West. I talked up Boise State. This is a good team. This is a team that I could see potentially, if they get the right matchup, advancing to the semifinals. But then they're going to get a tough draw. I think this is a Boise State team that's very talented. And Ashton Jeanty is a guy that deserved to win the Heisman, was up there in voting, second place. Good spot for him there. This is just a Boise State team that doesn't have the physicality, the ability to deal with some of these SEC teams down the stretch. They're just going to get absolutely blown up. And unfortunately, I don't know if they can really do anything about it. Maybe they can, but I don't really think this Boise State team stands much of a chance in the playoffs. At number 10, it's SMU, another team that has struggled with physicality. We saw them kind of figure it out down the stretch there against Clemson. They made it a close game. They tied it up. Clemson wins on a walk-off field goal. But SMU, I don't know if they're going to be able to deal with a team more physical than Clemson. Now, Penn State in the cold is going to be tough, and I think Penn State matches that description, a Big Ten, tough-nosed physical team. It's not going to be easy for them if they can win it. They may have a path to the college football semifinal. This is a team that could pull off an upset. If there's any team that I think could pull off a big upset, it's probably them. But SMU, I just don't think has the juice this season, and they are here at number 10. At number 9, another team that's kind of similar has the same issues to 11-10. It's the Indiana Hoosiers. We saw it, what happens when they go up against a physically dominant team in Ohio State. They get bullied. They get bullied on the inside. Now, they have a favorable matchup with Notre Dame. They kind of go strength on strength. Notre Dame is one of the best running teams in the country. Indiana, one of the best run defending teams in the country. It's going to be strength on strength. I want to give Indiana a chance here, but the way that they played against Ohio State doesn't make me think they're really going to win this one. I just think they're not going to be able to get the offense going, and Curtis Rourke is going to have a bad day back there because of that. They're down at the bottom half. Number 8 is Arizona State. I love the way that Arizona State is playing. I think the bye week actually might hurt them. The extra time between them playing might actually hurt them because they are playing hotter than just about anybody else in all of college football right now. Cam Skattebo, a guy that is incredible, just missed out on Heisman, had a couple votes go for him, was on the ballot there, just missed out on being invited to New York, was the 5th guy apparently. This is an Arizona State team that won the Big 12. I think they are the team that is the dark horse to win it all, right? If they play Clemson or Texas in the next round, I think they've got a shot. Then the tough matchup for them is going to be whichever one out of that three that comes out between Oregon, Ohio State, and Tennessee, right? That's going to be a tough one. Maybe they find a way to get into the championship game after that, but I think Arizona State is that dark horse team to watch out for if there's going to be any kind of not favorite to win this bracket. It's going to be Arizona State. Now we get into those teams that people think are going to win. Notre Dame at number 7. They didn't play too good against NIU. We're done talking about that, though. They've been incredible down the stretch. They've beaten everybody else, right? They've won pretty handily. They just run the ball against you. If you can stop the run, they're going to have a chance. And that's why I think Indiana has a chance in this one. But that physically overpowering defense might be a little too much. And once they get past Indiana, there's a chance they get to Georgia with a backup quarterback. That's not going to be a great matchup. We'll see. Some odds machines are giving them the best chance to win at over 50%. I think that's kind of crazy. But Notre Dame, they've got a real shot at this. 6 is Tennessee. If they can get past Ohio State, if they can get past Oregon, that's going to be smooth sailing. I really think whoever wins out of that trio up there is the best team in the country. I think that is by far the toughest road to go through. I just think having to go play in the shoe in Ohio State in the cold is going to be real tough. Although there's a chance, there's a movement out there to checkerboard the shoe. That'd be crazy if they were able to pull that off. Tennessee at number 6, that defense is amazing. Penn State at number 5. I'm putting some respect on Penn State here. They hung tight with Oregon. They hung tight with Ohio State. They didn't win either of those games, but especially in that Oregon game, they showed me a lot offensively. Drew Aller announced that he's going to be back, and if he can play like he did against Oregon in these playoffs, they have a road to the finals. I really think they do. They've got probably the easiest path, 11, and then they play the 11 seed in SMU, then the 4th, then the 3 seed in Boise State, and then they play a battered and beaten Georgia team. Or Notre Dame or Indiana, but it'll be tight. I think Penn State's got a real good shot to win. At 4, it's Texas. Like I said, I think they're a team that kind of chokes under pressure, but they've beaten Georgia. They're big games. They failed to beat Georgia twice, right? They've got Arch Manning looming in the shadows. They've got conversations of whether or not he should start. I think Quinn Ewers is going to keep that job. I think Quinn Ewers has been doing a really good job with that job so far. Texas, a really good squad, a really good college football team. They're in the top 4 for a reason. They should have gotten a bye. I really do believe that. Ohio State at 3, another team that I think should have probably gotten a bye. They didn't make their conference championship game, so maybe not on that one. But Ohio State has been a juggernaut. They've suffered 2 losses, one in a rivalry game, won by 1 point to the best team in the nation in Oregon, the number 1 undefeated Oregon Ducks. This is a good Buckeyes team. They have some weaknesses, the offensive line, but if Will Howard just plays clean, smart football, it doesn't mean non-aggressive football. It doesn't mean checkdowns and runs and runs and runs. If he just plays good football, no turnover football, the Buckeyes, I think, could win this tournament. They're the team that I think will win. Number 2, it's Georgia. I really think that Gunnar Stockton might be a better quarterback than Carson Beck, right? Carson Beck is great. He's just had a bit of an off season. He's not going to play these playoffs. Gunnar Stockton looked really good against Texas. He's the reason they won that game. They couldn't get anything going at all with Carson Beck. They get the run game going with Gunnar Stockton and that ability for him to run the ball. That's something that I think adds a whole nother dimension to this Georgia offense. It's going to make it tough for teams to fight. And then number 1 is the Ducks. They're undefeated. They're number 1 seed in the nation. They have the toughest path. That sucks. But they deserve all the chances. They deserve the number 1 spot. They're the only undefeated team left, and I don't think it's particularly close right now. I don't think they're going to be able to pull it out here, but as far as power rankings goes, they're undeniably the best team in the country. But let me know what you think. Who do you think is going to win the college football playoffs? I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of this. We will be back tomorrow. Actually, we will be gone for a little while on holiday break, but we will do one more show tomorrow. Then for the week, we'll be back in a little bit. Can't wait to see you all then. Have a great holiday season. You all have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go.